Okay, we're live. It's still not quite 6 yet. I'll wait till the clock turns over to start to talk, in case people are tuning in right on time. Okay, we'll start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Before I get into the talk itself, a couple of kind of housekeeping items. The first is to say what happened last week. We got about 5 minutes into the talk and the stream died. I think that it was had to be something on YouTube's end. Seems like YouTube is very demanding of bandwidth, and our bandwidth is not bad for most purposes, but I think it's just borderline for these uploading videos. So we'll see. This has happened a couple of times. So I'm going to redo this. I'm going to redo Mudita this week and just keep on the series. The other thing I want to say, just in general, which is probably affects the people who are listening later more than the people who are tuned in for the live stream. I've gotten a few complaints that ads are breaking up, advertisements are breaking up the videos. Um, I want to assure you that's completely YouTube's business. We haven't asked for ads. We're not monetized. We don't get anything out of that. It's entirely a YouTube thing. The only thing I could suggest for people who are finding that to be problematic is to use an ad blocker. I use Brave browser to watch videos on YouTube, and I never see an ad. It edits them out for me. So I would just say that's the only suggestion. I don't think there's any way we can turn it off from our end. Okay, so let's get into it. Uh, we're going to do Mudita this week, which is something I started last week and, of course, got cut off. Mudita is the third Brahmavihara, and this will probably be a relatively short talk because most of the main points that concern it I've already covered in the first two, metta and karuna, and really what all that needs to be spoken of here is the difference with mudita as a meditation. Uh, I would say that this third Brahma Vihara tends to be neglected. You don't hear people talking about it very much. Mostly, you hear about metta and to some degree karuna. But mudita is one of the four Brahmaviharas, and it is one that is especially uplifting to the mind. It makes you brightens the mind. It brings up joy. So it's a very good antidote to negative states of mind and feeling down or depressed. The aspiration associated with mudita is the complementary opposite of the one for karuna. With karuna, we wish may all beings be well and happy. With mudita, we wish may all beings continue to enjoy the happiness they have attained or the happiness they have found. For beings in the human realm, there is in every life some mixture of moments of pain and some moments of pleasure and many moments of neutral feeling. And we're with Karuna, we wish may beings not suffer, which analyzed it really means may they not experience dukkha vedana, unpleasant feeling. And this one, we're sympathetic joy or mudita, we're wishing may they continue to enjoy the happiness they have found. We could say in the general range of samsara that most beings will have some sukha vedana and some dukkha vedana. You might find a technical objection to say that the beings in the lowest hell, Avicii hell, never experience any pleasure. That's actually the definition of Avicii is without remission or uninterrupted. So that they're said to have no mind moments that aren't painful. And the Devas, of course, have almost entirely pleasure, but these are these are kind of edge cases relative to the human experience, which is a mixture of pleasure and pain. So, there are, of course, different degrees of happy feeling. There's a happy feeling derived from sense experience, sense pleasure. There's the happiness derived from meditation, from samadhi and jhana. And the third is happiness beyond happiness, sukha parasukham, that is the experience of nibbana or the unconditioned. So these are sometimes called the three happiness or the three sukha. And when we're wishing sympathetic joy to beings, it's not only the higher forms of happiness that we're focusing on. It's also worldly, ordinary happiness. And I put up on the thumbnail for this talk, I put a man riding on a decorated elephant. This is a reference to the Visuddhimagga. The section on mudita gives as an example the if one sees a person riding on a richly decorated elephant, one should not feel envy, but his heart should be moved to sympathetic joy. Oh, may he continue to enjoy such happiness. Envy is the enemy or the opposite, the negative opposite of sympathetic joy. Like if you see the guy riding on the richly decorated elephant and know you've got a broken down old donkey and you feel it makes you jealous and envious, then mind. And it's a very envy is a very negative and constricting state of mind. It really brings you down instead of feeling happy that the other person is enjoying prosperity or good health or whatever it might be. The near enemy of mudita, and remember each of the Brahmaviharas is a far enemy and a near enemy. The far enemy is a state that's the obvious opposite, such as cruelty is the opposite of karuna. Wishing harm on beings is the opposite of wishing that they free from harm. With mudita, the far opposite is envy, but the near enemy is a vicarious enjoyment of pleasure. So it's like you see someone enjoying their ride on the richly decorated elephant, and you just fantasize about yourself riding on the elephant. That's missing the point. That's not mudita. It's a counterfeit. It's kind of a state that is similar to mudita, but it doesn't have that spiritual benefit. So we do mudita the same way as we do metta or karuna. You can do it either, and there are multiple variations of these, but the two kind of broad categories of methods of doing it. The first is to focus on individuals, and you begin with yourself, then a teacher if the person is still alive, then your mother and father if they're still alive, then a good friend, a neutral person, and an enemy person. And the meditation is said to reach a perfection when you have the same feeling tone towards all people on the list. That's called breaking down the boundaries. You have just as much mudita for the enemy as for the dear friend. The other method is to go out in increasing circles, beginning with yourself, and then all the beings in your home, humans and animals and insects, whatever, and then all the beings in the neighborhood, in the town, in the province, in the continent. Just keep going out in increasing circles till you are extending it to the whole planet, then out into the infinity of space. The first method, going down the list of individuals, is more focused, and if developing a very unified state of samadhi is what you're seeking, then that's the preferable method. The other method is it's not as concentrated, it's not as focused, but it's very expansive of the mind, and it brightens and uplifts the mind in quite a wonderful way. So it's a very good method for overcoming negative states of mind. It just kind of blows up the cobwebs, really opens the mind up. All of these meditations, these first three Brahmaviharas, have many benefits. Now, one of the benefits is said to be he sleeps easily, he wakes easily, he dreams no evil dreams. So this means it's a very good practice to do in the evening before bed. If you want to, advice on a meditation schedule, that's a kind of a good practice to do for even like 15 minutes or so before bed. Now, there's not much more to say, particularly about mudita. Next week, we're going to do upekkha, which is different than the other three. It's a category on its own. It's quite a different topic. The first three, metta, karuna, mudita, are variations on a theme in a way. They all have the same sort of method and the same feeling, or similar feeling. It's not exactly the same. There's subtle difference. And the last point I'd like to make is that for all of these meditations, the proper object, in my view, is the feeling tone. That you need to try and raise that feeling tone, and whichever method you use, whether it's visualization or repetition of a phrase, whatever you find that helps you to raise that feeling, then that's the way to do it. That's correct for you. So I'll stop there. It's as I said, there's not too much to say that I haven't covered in the previous two talks, but that leaves us lots of time for questions and answers. So if you have anything you'd like to ask, particularly related to these first three Brahmaviharas, then type them into the chat. Okay, somebody just put something in. Let me increase the font so I can see it. Okay. Off topic, but could you do a talk on the relationship between experiences generated during meditation and Abhidhamma? Although it seems like abstract philosophy, it must draw from experiences. Yes, that's actually not a bad suggestion. Um, I'll make a general comment here. You'll find that in the Abhidhamma tradition is very strong in Myanmar and also the Vipassana tradition, because the two really go together. Uh, and the Abhidhamma is, I think, derived from meditation experience originally. Mudita is actually my favorite Brahmavihara contemplation. Yes, if you get into it, it's very, very pleasant. It's wonderful. When you get annoyed with someone, it is a good practice to right away wish metta for that person. Yes, it is. That's quite a skillful thing to do. You try and dissolve the negative state with a positive state. When we have mudita towards those qualities we admire, does that make the conditions favorable for us to achieve them within ourselves? Is this admiration similar to Devanusati? Yeah, I think there's something to that. But really, mudita. Well, I'm not denying there's something to that, some karmic effect. Mudita should be selfless. Like you shouldn't be doing it with the agenda of trying to attain those goods that you see other people enjoying, but just to rejoice in their happiness. So it the pure mudita is selfless, and it does have that similarity to Devanusati. Essentially, when you do Devanusati, you could say that's a form of mudita towards the devas. You're rejoicing in their happiness, which is extreme relative to human. Could you describe the difference between the joy that comes through insight and the state of joy that comes through samadhi? Well, in samadhi practice, piti and sukha, which are forms of joy, they're jhana factors, and they're states of mind that are very healing and purifying. The mudita kind of, or the piti kind of washes away. It's like a purifying experience in the body and the mind, and sukha is resting in that bliss. In insight practice, they're just additional objects that arise, and they can be distractions just as much as a painful sensation. If you get caught up in pleasant sensations in insight practice, then you're kind of missing the point. There is in the stages of insight, there is a phase that meditators go through that's called the 10 corruptions of insight. And it only occurs after the mind has reached a certain level of focus within the practice. It's kind of a intermediate kind of stage, and the corruptions are all states that would be considered very pleasant and uh, jhanic, even like luminous light, feelings of great joy, so on. And they're called corruptions in terms of insight because the meditator can attach to them and become caught in those states and not progress. One If one just sees them as objects, the meditator gets through that stage and enters the stage that's called um, knowledge of what is path and what is not path. And it's said by some of the Burmese teachers that the the true insight practice only really begins from that stage onwards. Uh, it's when one sees through those states; they're just conditionally arisen. You don't have to hold on to them. What is the correct mental attitude to take towards someone who actively goes out of their way to cause one's problems? Is it upeka? Well, it could be any. It could be either karuna or upeka. You can feel compassion for them because if they're making trouble, they're causing themselves trouble as well. They're experiencing suffering, or they wouldn't be acting that way. Or you can take an attitude of upeka, which is to recognize this being is just experiencing their karma and they're making new karma. And to take when you hold an attitude of upeka, you're also taking the self out of the picture. So you're just seeing it as unskillful formations. Uh, Off topic, but I'm curious about the practice of consecration of amulets and Buddha statues, thus containing the energy as practiced here in Thailand. Yeah, for those who are not familiar with the customs in Thailand, that there is a huge, almost an industry around these um, holy amulets that various uh, ajahns will will bless, and then they'll give them out, and people make a donation, and it's a big source of revenue for some monasteries. And in the Ajahn Chah never approved of this practice, and generally the forest tradition in general doesn't sees it as kind of corruption and rites and rituals. But Ajahn Chah did. I have heard the story that on occasion someone would bring him an amulet to bless, and he'd do it, but then he'd say to the person, uh, "Okay, the blessing I gave you is only good as long as you keep the 5 precepts." So turns around and makes something skillful out of it. I did something kind of similar here many years ago. There was a young guy here who was a bit crazy and reckless, let's say. And he just bought himself a new truck, well used truck. He just bought, and he asked me to do a blessing ceremony on the truck to keep it safe. And I did the blessing ceremony. I did a little chanting and sprinkled some water on the engine of the truck. And then I told him, now that blessing is only good up to 60 miles an hour. Let's see. If we genuinely rejoice in another's success, isn't that we feel that we know more? Is there a defilement in that perception? No, I don't see why that. You're not putting yourself in a superior position to the person. Um, you're actually accepting your own relative misfortune in some cases. like the case of the man seeing, the poor man seeing a rich man riding on an elephant. He rejoices in the other's success. He's not putting himself to be superior to the other person. Teacher from Burma, Burmese Vipassana tradition says that seeing one's own body falling apart is an condition for stream entry. Is that to be found in the suttas? No, I don't think so. Not so explicitly. I think what this must be referring to is late stages of knowledge of fearfulness, or knowledge of impermanence and so on, that one sees the body as falling apart and breaking up. These stages of insight are not directly from the suttas. There's only the germ of it in the suttas, in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Relay Coach Sutta, where the stages are only named but not described. And it's the commentarial tradition, particularly the Visuddhimagga, that expanded it into the complex system that is used by the Burmese Vipassana teachers. Someone says there's a spelling mistake in the title. No doubt, probably. I'll have to check that. I think I can change it. Okay. Okay, so the stream is held up this time. That's good. This is confused thinking that it's a resting abode of the Brahmas, but that's not a wholesome connection with the specific practice, and the Brahmas are superior. Okay, this is a reference to the previous question about feeling superior. Okay, yeah, okay, I kind of see where you're coming from now. You're not, although these states of mind are native to the Brahma realm, it's not. It's not that you're imagining yourself to be equal to a Brahma. You're just trying to have this selfless feeling of joy in other people's happiness. Would the Buddha teach the Dhamma to beings living in poverty or war-torn places where basic needs are not even met? It seems like the path can only be cultivated when there's some degree of stability. Well, there was poverty and war in India in the Buddhist time, but I think you are right in that most of the followers of the Buddha in the early period were not drawn from the lowest classes, but were merchants and Brahmins and so on. Although he did have some students that we know of who were even from the Chandalas, or the outcasts, the very lowest of the low in Indian society at the time. So the Dhamma is suitable and available for all beings, but if beings are in a gross state of suffering, it's very hard for them. Now, if you're not meeting your basic bodily needs, you're not going to be really have the mental space or the leisure to pursue further development on a spiritual level. It's part of the nature of being in samsara, and even more unfortunate than unfortunate humans are beings in the lower realms, an animal or a ghost or so on. They cannot attain to jhana or stream entry. But also we could I have to add, we should always remember that in Buddhism there's no eternal damnation. The beings who are in some state of misfortune or suffering now in a future life may enjoy better circumstances. Maybe you answered this already, but what level of Dewas experienced Mudita? I've heard some Dewas are jealous of the power of other Dewas and even of some human beings. Yeah, well, the Brahmaviharas in general are especially associated with the Brahma gods. The Dewas can experience these states, but you're right that there is sometimes jealousy amongst the Dewas. There's in the commentary to the Brahmajala Sutta, there's a discussion about one of the ways in which the Dewas from uh, the level of the four great kings, some of the Dewas in that realm can come to an early death by becoming overcome with envy and jealousy of other Dewas. And uh, because the Dewa body is so subtle and delicate in a way that it can't take extreme negative emotions. It breaks apart and dies. And it gives the example of a Dewa sees another Dewa coming down the street in a chariot, and the chariot is much more magnificent and rich than his own. And he becomes consumed with envy and jealousy, and he ends up burning up. Not all the Dewas are wise. There are some wise Dewas. There's some Dewas that become stream runners. So a lot of the Dewas are just lost in their pleasures, and they're kind of foolish. Okay, so I think I'll stop now. I do have a meeting I have to be at in a short while, and the chat seems to have quieted down. So we'll see you next week, and next week we're going to deal with the fourth Brahma Vihara, which is Upeka, and it's uh, on a different level. It's quite different than the first three. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it.